I will tell you, you heard some things about controversial subjects. This is something where there is absolute controversy, and there's certainly, if you look at the organizations of organized orthopedic surgery and neurosurgery, there are some very, very, very strongly held opinions. So basically, for this particular topic, I don't know where do I point this. I'll just use this. There we go. I don't really have any disclosures. I was the chair of the American Board of Neurological Surgery. I was on the RRC for neurosurgery for a number of years, and I was the vice chair of that. And they're probably my only things that impact this. So spine training, and just what we've heard today, spine training is really complex. And it's not anymore a laminectomy. It's not doing a simple fusion. There are so many things that go into what it takes to be a fully trained spine surgeon. And spine surgeons come to the spine training through two different pathways. And one of them is in neurosurgery, and you can see the spectrum of what involves neurosurgery, and this is the spectrum of orthopedics. And you can see spine's this little tiny ball off to the side. You know, when you talk about total ankle replacements and arthroscopy and trauma and oncology, you know, it's an enormous field in both areas. And what happens is so little of the time is spent in either of them, but particularly in orthopedics, that the amount of training that you get in spine is somewhat minimal. And this is an article from several years ago that said it used to be that, you know, not many people did a fellowship after an orthopedic residency, and now over 80% of them do it. I think this one said 90%. And what's happening is this increasing trend to do multiple fellowships. And there's several fellowships in the United States now that will not take a spine fellow unless they've done a previous fellowship someplace else. So what's happening is, you know, this training is just going on, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And the fact is that correct? So what's happening is this got into focus with me with our oldest daughter, Ellen. And Ellen thought about orthopedic surgery, then she thought about otolaryngology, and then finally she said, you know something, I heard a talk about integrated plastic surgery. And I can do whatever I want. I can be a hand surgeon, I can be a microvascular surgeon, I can be an aesthetic surgeon. And I can do my whole training. From day one, I start doing plastic surgery. And at the end of 6 years, I am fully and completely trained. And if I wanted to do otolaryngology and then go on, or if I wanted to do orthopedic surgery and go on, I'm looking at 9 years or 10 years if I would want to do a subsequent fellowship in something like aesthetics or microvascular. And she goes, I just don't want to spend that time. And so what you see here is that basically these integrated models, and this is for plastic surgery, vascular surgery, cardiothoracic surgery, are extremely popular, and you are absolutely getting the best and brightest by any measure that you do. The people are going through medical school right now. If they're interested in the surgical field, they're going into an integrated field. And when we look at something, and we look at orthopedics, which has under 10%, I think for neurosurgery, it's 11%, of our total number of residents are women, what happens is it's completely unattractive, these 10-year programs. So this is for integrated vascular surgery. And again, that's a field that is recently, you could see, as recently as 8 years ago, there were 0 women doing vascular surgery fellowships. And now almost 45% of people doing it by the integrated model are now women. And you can see, as you're going to see here, this is integrated plastic surgery where it's 50%. Here's integrated vascular surgery, about 40%. And they're at the bottom two, that's traditional neurosurgery and orthopedic surgery, where it's around 10% of people going into it. So what's happening? These programs, and particularly when we're looking at doing spine surgery, okay, telling someone they're going to spend 8 or 9 or 10 years to get to that point is just not a tenable thing to do. But I'll tell you, trying to go and do something different is an enormous lift. So the first integrated plastic surgery program was at Stanford by a guy named Robert Chase. And if you look at different publications for that time in the 60s. They said this is a complete anomaly, and there was enormous resistance from the entire plastic surgery organized committee. And so what's happening is they were not allowed to sit for board certification. So Dr. Chase had to set up his own board, a board of integrated plastic surgery. But it became so popular that suddenly around 1995, they said, oh, hey, come join us. And so what happens is, if you go, is success has many fathers, but, failure is an orphan. As this became successful, and you can see that, that 80% of the plastic surgery programs in the country now are integrated plastic surgery programs. And it's just a sea change as far as what's going on. And many people feel that the traditional following orthopedics or ENT or general surgery to go into plastic surgery is going to die. So what's happening is people have been looking at this topic for a long time about the length of doing it. And this is an article that was in JAMA and said, look, we have to reduce medical training by at least 30% because we are wasting the time of many of our best and brightest people. And they said this goal of being this researcher and you need to spend 2 years in the lab and being a scintillating teacher and being a master surgeon and whatnot, so this just isn't a realistic goal for today's medicine. So we look and say, okay, let's say we're not going to do this. We're just going to let things drift along as we're currently doing it. And what's happening is that this is an article looking at general surgery. And I'm old enough, and probably nobody else, maybe Pierce in the back, Rick, that being a general surgeon back 25 or 30 years ago was thought to be the pinnacle. If you were the best top person in your medical school class, you were looking to go into general surgery. And this field, as you're going to see, is dying. And the people that are getting in, it's shown that their actual scores on their certifying exam have diminished over 50%. They've got multiple people that are failing with this. And so they did a Blue Ribbon Commission, again, this was in 2014, saying, we got to change this. But the organization, Organized General Surgery, said, absolutely no way. And the recommendation is that they do a 3+2 model, 3 years of basic training, 2 years of sort of in-folded fellowship training, and basically that was rejected. But they said in the editorial to this that this has led to all of these integrated programs starting. They're starting one now in colorectal surgery. They're doing other things with integration. So what's happening is the kickback is that the way that we've always done it is battle tested, and the people that come into a fellowship are so much further ahead. So this is an article looking at sent out to all the different surgical subspecialty fellowship programs. And what they found was about 25% of people finishing a general surgery residency were absolutely and totally unprepared for the operating room. They said that basically many people could not suture or perform simple procedures. They said 66% could not be left for 1 minute unsupervised for a major surgical procedure. So if this is battle tested and it's working so well and you've spent 6 years and you come out and you can't essentially do anything, there's a problem with that training model. So if you look at the red thing, that is now the number of filled for general surgery residencies right now. The lowest of anything in surgery. People are not going into it because it is a failed model. Now what's happening is, unfortunately, there's big differences between neurosurgery and orthopedic surgery. And this is looking at the average cases as a senior resident you do during the course of your residency. And what you see there is that, for example, for the average neurosurgery resident, does about 75 ACDFs. They do 145 as a lead surgeon, thoracic, thoracolumbar fusions, and in this group they average about 500 as a lead surgeon surgical procedures during the course. So in orthopedic surgery, you don't have to be a lead surgeon. The RRC for orthopedics say you have to be exposed. You have to be in the operating room for 15 spine cases during the course of your residency, okay? And the neurosurgery RRC says you have to participate. You have to be an actual operative surgeon at a minimum of 240 cases. And so what's happening from RRC data is that the average person who's looking at spine in a career does over 1,000, and the top person did over 1,200 cases as a lead surgeon as a neurosurgery resident. And so one of the things that go along to this is, and this is this, I was involved in a thought exercise that we went and said, what would it take to have a fully functional spine residency? And this was published in Spine about 8 years ago. And the number of hate emails, people saying, you are going to destroy our specialty, you are going to destroy orthopedic surgery, you are going to destroy neurosurgery, was just incredibly high. So the fact is that integrating something, having it as a unified resident, I think is a nearly impossible task. And it's certainly, if anybody younger here says, I want that to be my goal, you better hope that you don't ever want to do anything else in organized orthopedic surgery or neurosurgery, because if you do, you will be absolutely blacklisted, okay? So what's happening is that when I was on the neurosurgery and the ABNS and the RRC, I absolutely, every meeting I went to, I said, you have to finish training for neurosurgeons completely, including their fellowship, in 7 years. And this is why we started the chief year as PGY6, and the PGY7 is a fellowship year, which you can use for a lot of different things. And so I went to the orthopedic RRC and said, you guys need to do the same thing. Maybe you even add a year of residency, but everybody finishes their fellowship enfolded into doing it. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of interest. And what's happening is that right now, you're going to have, if you have a neurosurgery resident, you're going to have somebody that's done 1,000 to 1,500 cases as a lead surgeon, as your fellow. If you have an orthopedic surgeon, you may have somebody who has done 6 or 8 or 10 people. And the question is, can they, in 1 year, learn all that needs to be done in the complex field of spine surgery? And is that good for the people, our patients in the world in general? Thank you.